Judge uses Trump immunity ruling after Trump administration arrests her. Good for you, Judge. Here's looking at you. The judge arrested by Trump administration cites Trump immunity ruling in her defense. It says I can't be prosecuted. Kind of king-like, or queen in this case. And moving to dismiss her new federal indictment, Judge Hannah Dugan cited last year's Supreme Court ruling in Donald Trump's favor. The problems with this prosecution are legion, but most immediately, the government cannot prosecute Judge Dugan because she is entitled to judicial immunity for her official acts. The Milwaukee judge's lawyers wrote in a motion filed Wednesday. That motion continues. Immunity is not a defense to the prosecution to be determined later by a jury or court. It is an absolute bar to the prosecution at the outset, they wrote, directly citing Trump, the United States. Thanks, Clarence Thomas. Thank you, Samuel Alito. This judge is entitled to judicial immunity? Let's see. MSNBC reporting that Dugan's indictment alleges 2 counts, concealing a person from arrest and obstruction for alleged action she took as immigration agents tried to apprehend an individual inside her courtroom. She pleaded not guilty to the charges on Thursday. Administration officials touted the judge's arrest last month with Attorney General Pam Bondi. She's good at stocks too, huh? Proclaiming no one is above the law. Of course, the dissenters in Trump v. United States accused the majority of putting the president above the law. Now, Dugan is hoping that precedent helps her avoid the charges brought by the administration of the man who was held by and whose name bears that precedent. In her motion to dismiss, Dugan's lawyers quote from the Trump immunity ruling where it said, quote, in dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire into the president's motives. They quoted that line to support the argument that her subjective motivations are irrelevant to immunity. They also cite the Trump immunity ruling's quotation of a prior precedent that said the essence of immunity is the immunity possessor not having to answer for their conduct in court. Judge Dugan, therefore, has both immunity from conviction and immunity from prosecution, they wrote. While the Trump administration, I mean, it's just so rich, or as I like to say, delicious. While the Trump precedent appearance in Dugan's motion is notable, she doesn't pin her entire argument to that one case. Among other points, her lawyers wrote that judicial immunity goes way back, since at least the early 17th century in England. Carried on through common law in the United States, judges of record have been entitled to absolute immunity for official acts with a few exceptions, not applicable here, they wrote in the dismissal motion. Questions about whether the president may be held liable for particular actions consistent with the separation of powers must be addressed at the outset of a proceeding, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the Trump case. One of the differences between Dugan's case and Trump's is that if it's an issue that will require prolonged litigation up and down the court system, we might have a better chance to learn the full extent of what judicial conduct is immune from prosecution. In Trump's federal election interference case, the justices sent the case back to the trial court to apply the new presidential immunity rules laid out by the high court. But that litigation was cut short due to Trump's 2024 election win and the Justice Department's policy against prosecuting sitting presidents, which is another thing that still irks me. What is this internal policy? There's the law and then that's it. That's really what it should be. So knock it off. Policy. It's just a policy. But, okay. If you say so. Unless Dugan assumes the presidency anytime soon, that shouldn't be an issue here. So I don't know what's going to happen. They'll weasel out of it. What's good for the goose is never good for the gander. Not with this administration, Jordan. But what do you make of this little clever back at you that the Judge Dugan and her legal team are doing here?
You know, it's certainly worth trying. You know, it'll upset him. It does remind people this is somebody who argued that he's basically above the law. So, while I see the humor in it and I respect the strategy, I'm a bit worried that what we saw initially as a bad outcome and a bad interpretation and a bad decision could spread throughout the government. And the last thing I want is some of these, rogue MAGA judges who for the past several years had been blocking everything good, and who knows what they could resort to. I don't know if I want a scenario where more and more government officials, whatever role or branch they're in, to have immunity. I'm very worried about that. So I
Yeah,
think I don't think what she did was wrong, and I certainly don't think she should have been arrested. They were trying to make an example of her, but the consequences of a case like this advancing, I'm a bit worried about what that looks like down the road.
yeah, you're really saying that Judge Dugan and her team saving herself at all costs could have repercussions that are that can cement this king lie that Trump and his captured Supreme Court pushed upon us. We don't want it spreading. We want to resist. Do not accept that lie. I don't care if the highest court in the land did it anyway. And the guy whose wife put the upside down flag there, blame it on your wife. Or the guy with the Winnebago. Resist. I don't even like the fact that Judge Dugan, although I do find the humor in it, and I like pointing out the irony, although it's lost on so many. I don't like the fact that she mentioned England and down back to the 17th century. Because of course, isn't that what the whole thing, they wasted all that tea and dumped it in a harbor was about? Correct me. I listened as much as I could because it didn't include the full American history. I know some things. I listened to class enough. But the tea and the Paul Revere and all of this other stuff, weren't they fighting because we're not going to be part of this king type stuff from England? It's not rhetorical, Jordan. That's you.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, common law and I don't think we should summarily dismiss it just because of where it came from or that interpretation came from. Common law has lasted for centuries, so I'm not inherently opposed to it, but I do think like the consequences should be evaluated here, even though
Yeah.
it does seem like something worth considering for her legal team. And again, I want to reiterate, she never should have been arrested. The fact that they are going after her for her decision, like, it's heinous. The only the consequence though of this argument in court and the precedent it could send if it escalates, or set if it escalates, I'm worried about more nefarious right-wing judges exploiting that. That's all I'm saying.
And they will. I guess it's unfair to ask you this, but what do you make of the chances this judge has at just resolving this and getting back on the bench? Or do you think the administration, who is clearly driving this and commenting about it, will stop at nothing, just like in the Abrego Garcia case, to see to it that she is done, make an example of her?
It certainly seems like that's what they want. Like, they want to just ruin her life, and they will drag this out as long as they have to. So yeah, for that, it's like, okay, I mean, I hope she's successful, but it seems like they really want to just completely upend this judge's life.
Yeah, make an example, scare others is what they really want to do. It's, it's just what we're doing.